Previously on the Come Up Next Level
I'm
Mindset.
only responsible for my response. So I always, even now, I think about things that you tell us every Sunday. Open our eyes so we can see the wicked ones when they're trying to attack. And more importantly, ask God to give us the correct response. And a lot of times we don't have the correct response because
with the emotional thing, you know, like me, myself, we talk about eating again. I know that I'm a stress eater.
yeah,
So when trauma happens or things like that in my life happens, what I do, I turn to food and I turn to the wrong food.
right.
And start eating all type of junk food and stuff like that. So, and that's my way of dealing with it. And I know that's not the way you're supposed to deal with it.
Right.
You know,
Even in the stages of grief, one of those stages that they tell us is denial. And there are a lot of folks going through life in denial, acting like everything is okay when it's not okay. Acting like someone has to, at some point, will accept them for where they are, accept them for who they are with all their baggage. And that's not.
Hey, what's good, everybody? I'm Marwin Adair, and welcome to another episode of the Come Up Next Level Mindset. I have been talking with Arian Tyson about dealing with emotional trauma, and today I'm releasing part 3. But before we get into the video, do me a favor, subscribe, like, and hit that notification button so you'll never miss a video. Thank you.
With strength. I'm going to just get with God and it's just me and God alone.
Right.
That's what happened. When my mother was telling me after my ex-wife left, you know, you can always move back home. I said, no, ma'am. I appreciate you offering me the outlet to move back home, but I have to stand on my own.
Right.
And in that process, that's when I really began to trust God. And in the process, God elevated me. It was in that process that I became an author. When I finally sat down after years, after putting it off, because people told me as a teenager I should write a book. But it literally took me going through the most traumatic experiences of my life to sit down, and in a span of 2 months, that book was written from cover to cover.
And that's when you saw recognizing or dealing with the emotional trauma?
I dealt with it in the process of writing the book. It was helping me heal.
Right.
I wrote the book in 2017, literally as my divorce was being finalized.
Right.
While going through the divorce process, which was extended because of my ex-wife,
Right.
because they didn't want to face me. So they got a lawyer for whatever reason. But in that process, I sat down and just started writing a chapter a week. And I look up, and the greatest feeling that I was able to do after the divorce was finalized was to see my book printed and to give the very first copy to my mother.
Right.
Something that I had been putting off, something that I didn't think I was good enough to do. And a lot of times we put things off because we don't think that people would want to hear it. We don't think people would support us. We don't think people would be interested in hearing our story. But as I've always said, and I've said it before, I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to keep saying it, that there is power in our story. And nobody can tell our story better than us. I don't care how good of a speaker you are. You can't tell my story better than me.
Right.
I can't tell your story better than you. And the reason being is because you're the one constant in everything that's happened, regardless to who came, regardless to who left, regardless to who tried to come back. You're the one constant.
Right.
And when I learned that, it was in that moment when I had nobody to trust but God. I found my relationship with him getting stronger.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself being elevated in ministry into a position that I had never saw myself in. But I heard it as a kid. I heard it during the earliest stages of ministry. You're going to be a pastor. I had no desire to be a pastor.
Right.
I had no desire to be a speaker. I grew up very shy. I grew up very reserved, very quiet. In my natural state, I'm quiet. I like to listen. I've always been told I was a good listener. And to be able to recall and articulate and eloquate my thoughts. I grew up with speech delay. A lot of people don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
So to see myself as a minister, as a pastor, as a speaker.
And a motivator.
A friend gave me that title, the Moving Motivator, that moniker, the Moving Motivator, because I literally started shooting videos, going to a job that I really did not like, start shooting videos in my car, and I was consistent at it.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing who it was going to impact, but just to put it out there. Didn't care about editing, didn't know how to edit or anything like that. But just understood that people began to affirm me.
And when you did that, was you and your ex-wife still together?
I started doing that before I met her. That's actually how I met my ex-wife.
Okay.
Through my videos. She
Okay.
found me through my videos.
Okay.
And did it throughout the dating, the marriage. The podcast came after she left.
Okay.
It was during going through the divorce process, and then that led to the book. So there's a method to the madness.
Right, right.
There were levels. So that's where that motivation to elevation came from.
Mm-hmm.
It came from being able to deal with the trauma, but being able to look back to see where God brought me from. Because I didn't get to where I'm at now on my own strength.
Let me ask you this, because I'm thinking about my wife here. She used to have this sheet of paper. She just print them out, pass them out. Every time somebody got, something happened to them, she'd pass it out. It was surrender your emotions.
Yes.
And it's like, man, one, you don't feel like doing it, but through this process, is that what was happening? Is you was kind of like writing down how you was actually feeling, what you was going through? Because I want to talk about it too, because I started remembering the shift too. But just to answer that question.
Yes. So for me, and I have to credit my great grandmother, God rest her soul, because prior to becoming an author, becoming an assistant pastor, becoming a minister, before becoming the Moving Motivator, before I ever shot my first video, again, I mentioned I suffered from speech delay as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
My great grandmother told me, write your feelings down on paper.
Right.
That led to me actually writing poetry. Poetry is what led to me having the courage to later become an author.
Right.
And it was in the process of writing poetry was where I was able to get my feelings out. We have to have an outlet, but the outlet has to be healthy.
Now, if you don't have an outlet, what you think is happening?
What happens is we either keep it bottled up until it manifests into a health condition. I know men are really guilty of that because that's what the previous generations taught us. You weren't supposed to show any type of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you look soft. But there has to be a balance.
Right.
Moderation is key to where now we see today that you have a growing generation of emotionally weak men, to the point where there are a lot of males acting like females. Well, what caused all that?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of factors. Because one, a lot of men males, they were willing participants
Mm-hmm.
in the creation of the child, but then they're not taking responsibility for their role in this child being here.
Which causes emotional trauma in the woman, which is also emotional trauma in the child. So yeah.
And a lot of that, if the woman doesn't deal with it correctly, projects into the children.
Mm-hmm.
So then now you have children growing up thinking that their daddy don't love them,
emotional,
thinking that daddy doesn't care for them, when that's not always the case.
Right. So you call this emotional unstableness.
Yes.
At a young age. And now the more and more trauma keeps happening, they keep going through things in life. They seeing abuse, they seeing abandonment, letdowns.
And disappointment. And a
Yeah.
lot of times I've seen instances where one of the issues is the fact that you actually have to keep it balanced. You actually have some women deliberately keeping the children from the other parent because of the issue that they have that has nothing to do with the children, but the children are getting the backlash from it. They're the ones that are experiencing the hurt and growing up as the days, months, and years go by with that, because the first person that's supposed to love you is your mother and father.
Right.
So let's say you have a female child, that daughter, their first love is supposed to be their daddy. But what happens when their daddy's not there? And they don't, and because they really don't know why, because it's not their business to know what happens between that mother and that father, but they're going off of what the present parent is saying.
Yeah, and they still got feelings.
Right.
And I think, like I said, when we talk about emotions, we talking about feelings.
Exactly.
And so, like, if I'm hurt and I don't get to express it, then what am I doing with that hurt? I'm either letting the bottle up on the inside, or I'm projecting it in some type of negative behavior, or making, again, bad decisions.
You make reckless choices.
Yeah.
And then you get to a point where you find people in relationships that are trying to fill that void.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for someone that's trying to fill the void of a lost mother or father that wasn't there.
Right.
When that person, it's not that person's responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Again, going back to dealing with your emotional state and yourself, realizing that there's something wrong with, or expressing your feelings, sharing, hey, this is how this made me feel.
Right.
And that way you get to deal with the emotions of how you felt, I'm gonna ask a question, because I remember me and him, we know each other real well, but you used to always say, and you say it the way you say it all the time. You say something about some, I can't remember exactly how you say it, but you say they're just my expressions that I can't hide.
Yeah. So basically what I say is, when it comes to expressing how I feel, I have no problem articulating my thoughts. However, sometimes it is my face that needs deliverance, because it can be written on my face that I have a thought or something doesn't sit right with me.
Mm-hmm.
And my face will give it away.
Right.
So I would say, yeah, it's my face that needs deliverance. And there are other things. There may be some different that you need deliverance from. For me, it's my face. My face needs deliverance sometimes, because I can hear something, and I hear things differently. I can hear something, and without knowing it, my eyebrows are raised.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I don't even know I'm doing it. Sometimes I have to catch myself, because I put it like this. The only time I really have a poker face is in poker.
Right. And other than that.
Other than that, but I've learned to pick and choose your battles. Everything doesn't have to be a debate. Everything doesn't have to be an argument. And sometimes you have to ask, what's more important? Being right or making peace?
Right.
And notice I didn't say keeping peace, because there's a difference between making peace and keeping peace. And I did not know that. And it wasn't until I went through the trauma that I dealt with, I realized that I was being passive aggressive.
Right.
In trying to keep peace.
Now, did the passive aggression come from?
It comes from trying to avoid certain things, trying to avoid an argument, having an argument, because a lot of times we can get in our head a lot. So we've already figured out that if I say this and it's going to lead to this and it's going to lead to this. And we tell ourselves, why would I want to put myself through that? So what we'll do is we'll just do our best to avoid it. But some things are meant to be addressed head on.
Right.
And in the process of avoiding it, you can actually cause damage. And it grows because it's just like poking a bear. You poke a bear and they don't say nothing. So you just think you can just keep doing it. It's not until that bear raises up that the poking stops.
And then too, when the poking, I mean, we talk about people.
Yeah.
Poking at that person, is that person really not? I mean, you can keep poking, but what is the response?
Right.
And if that person is not dealing with the response or having a correct response or not dealing with
Right.
their emotions, what happened is the anger arises.
Exactly.
So anger is not the how do I want to say it? It's not the last emotion. It's the buildup.
It's the buildup
of what you've been going through.
And that's what happened with me. That's what happened. My anger from all the deaths in my family happening at a very small window. Plans, because we make plans, but sometimes God changes our plans.
Right.
But what I've learned through that process of going through emotional trauma is God will wreck your plans when he sees that your plans are about to wreck you.
That's right.
Because God has the foresight that we'll never have. God has already seen the end. God wants us to trust him regardless to what it looks like.
Right.
I had to trust God. Imagine, I had to trust God having to bury my father.
Yeah.
Having to deal with someone that I thought was forever, because you knew how I felt about my ex.
Yeah.
And I went out my comfort zone because I swore I would never date long distance.
Yep.
But in the process of doing that, going through that, I learned more about myself. I started doing my work. And I started doing something that you didn't know I was doing for 2 years until recently.
Now hold that because I want to make that the last thing.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
Matter of fact, let's just go ahead and go right there, because I remember we was having a men's meeting and we started talking about self-care.
Yeah.
And that was before the thing you was finna say, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you think that self-care led up to where you went?
Absolutely. Without question.
Yeah.
Without question. Because I was guilty of putting myself into the work. but not dealing with it properly.
Mm-hmm.
To where all I did was work. Even when I was married, I did something I said I would never do. I took on a second job. I always said 2 jobs was for two people.
I say the same thing.
And I became a driver
Mm-hmm.
while I was married. And my plan was for us to have a second source of income coming in,
Mm-hmm.
so that my wife and I at the time would be able to move to Houston, Texas, and start a family. Well, fast forward, I still have never been to Houston, Texas.
Right.
And that family didn't get started because she left.
Mm-hmm.
And so I reached a significant age childless.
Right.
I didn't plan that.
Right.
And
That's another emotion that you got to deal with.
Exactly.
You know? So yeah.
Exactly. But in the process of that, what started off as me doing something for a friend of mine that I reconnected with on social media that I had not seen since grade school, since middle school, had not seen this person in over 20 years. I decided that I was going to take them to go get a massage for their birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know what? I'm going to treat myself. So we went and got a massage together. What started that off, and I thought about it, and I had a full body massage before, but the last time I had a full body massage was in 2012. So at this point, it's 2021. 2021. And I thought about all the stuff I had been through in those 9 years. No wonder I had all the knots in my back and the knots in my shoulder.
Right.
Because all I was doing was working, trying to make myself busy, trying to get to the bag or trying to make this money. But I hadn't dealt with that piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part that a lot of people miss out on. You have to do your work.
So the self-care actually helps you deal with some emotional things.
Absolutely, because it helped me, because all I was doing was working out. But when was I taking time to relax? I'm in the gym. I'm pumping iron.
So when you say self-care, that's what you're talking about. Basically
being able to unplug, to turn off the noise, turn off your mind. So what led to me doing a massage for a friend, I said, you know what I'm gonna do this once a month. And I've done it once a month, committed myself to self-care every month since November of 2021. Mm-hmm. We are in March of 2024. I have not missed a month.
So you've been doing it since when?
Since November of 2021.
Okay.
Every month, consistently.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's going to get a massage or what I do now, I get in a sensory deprivation tank, float therapy. I'm floating on 1,000 pounds of water and Epsom salt. And I'm able to just relax.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just feel the tension leave my body.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not worried about what's going on, what bill need to be paid, who said this or who ticked me off at work. I'm not worried about that.
Now, let me ask you this, and I want to say this because somebody might be listening to us right now that said, well, I don't have the money to do something like that every month. And again, we're not licensed counselors, but what are some things you think that a person can do that is free? They can actually help them just say, and I think everybody got to figure out what that thing is on their own. What is it that puts you in that space relaxation, being able to unplug or unwind?
I want to address it this way, and then I'm going to address the question that you asked. We do have the money. You do have the money. And here's why I say this. We have money for the things that we want to do. We will find a way. And one thing that I commend, that I will give credit to, that taught me this, is watching single parents, specifically more or less single mothers. They make it happen. They find a way to make it happen. Do they have the money that they think they should have or they would like? Most of them do not. But they're going to find a way to make sure that their children don't go without. In the process of that, you have to do that for yourself before you get that evil report, as we like to say it, before you get that nasty diagnosis. You have to care enough about yourself to realize that you deserve it, that you worked your tail off to get to where you are. You may not be where you want to be, but thank God you're not where you used to be.
Hey, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in on the Come Up Next Level Mindset and for watching part 3 of dealing with emotional trauma. Listen, I have part 4 coming out real soon. So if you haven't already done, hit the subscribe, like, and notification button. That way you can see part 4 when it drops. And I just want to thank you again. And my name is Marwin Adair, and I'll see you next time on the Come Up Next Level Mindset. Peace.